Do you remember the cost of lockdown, the cost of furlough, the cost of PPE during the lockdown, and the cost of everything that happened? Well, there's a new problem, and that's thanks to Rishi Sunak. Where is the media scrutiny when it comes to the government's mismanagement of the whole country? Actually, in reality, what's going on right now is quite a tragedy because the government don't know exactly that we are going to be watching them. They don't know that they can no longer simply just hide their numbers behind closed doors. Their PPE that has been in storage since lockdown, and by the way, you do know that some of this stuff is not going to be living forever. Some of this stuff is going to be outdated. Some of this stuff has already been produced by factories in China and India and other places that are not really into health and safety, so they were never effective. Now we've got some new information. Rishi Sunak's government are spending almost £1 million a day to keep this in place. £770,000 per day is being spent on storing the PPE that we have left over. 13 billion items in storage, and we also have 120 million of these items storing in China. I wonder why Rishi Sunak doesn't want to cut off ties with China. Because we still have stuff in there. £8.6 billion worth of PPE. The majority of them cannot be used anyway. This is literally almost £9 billion of taxpayers' money. A lot of it's going to be wasted, if not all of it. Now, some of it is going to be useful, some of it can be used, and the hospitals can use them all the time. Fine. The big chunk of it, firstly, there was no scrutiny over the contracts. There was no scrutiny over how to handle and who's going to be obviously in charge of their maintaining and storing it. So private contractors could do whatever they want. And there is no media scrutiny. Speaking of contracts, speaking of private contracts, that's when you do with governments, you could do whatever you want because governments and politicians are not negotiators. They're not business negotiators. In case you haven't heard, this is another chaotic situation because one of the members of the House of Lords, who happens to be Tory, received £29 million in profit from a PPE firm called PPE MedPro, which she recommended to ministers. So, there's such thing called as the insider trading in terms of the stock market. We need extra regulation when it comes to politicians or anybody having a vested interest in something, especially when it comes to investment, and then recommending it word of mouth to the government to be used. This is a scandal. You can't do that. You shouldn't be able to do that. And you're giving a massive, massive ammo to the left to be able to say, well, this is happening mainly because British conservatism is corrupt. You do realise the same thing would have happened under a Labour government. And I'm not even defending the Tory party, because the Tory party is over in terms of the peak accountability of the Tory party. That, the party that was supposed to be stable, that was supposed to be reliable. No, that's all gone. But it is simply about the state, the British state and British government overall, completely all over the place, completely mishandling our budget, our taxpayer money, and of course our resources. Speaking of MPs, let's come back in half an hour. One of the Tory MPs in Skegness was confronted by local residents, angry local residents, over the issue of the migrant crisis. That's one video not to be missed. Subscribe to the channel. I'm Tousi, and we are the media.